Welcome to the Indie Backlog Club, a podcast where we dive into our game libraries to talk in depth about some fantastic indie titles from our backlog. I'm Kat, also known as The Cat is a Lie, a gamer and crafter on Twitch. Together here with Rachel, an artist and blogger from the Indie Hive game review website, and Heather, also known as Red Pandamon, an artist and gamer on Twitch. This episode, we plug in and load up the game Beacon Pines by Hiding Spot Games, a cute and creepy narrative adventure game set within a mysterious book. We'll be sneaking out late, making new friends, uncovering hidden truths, and collecting charms that will change the course of the fate of Beacon Pines. As a friendly reminder, our podcast does not shy away from spoilers as we dive deep into our thoughts, opinions, and experiences with the game. So if you haven't gotten to experience the title for yourself and want to stay surprised, please come back and enjoy our podcast after you've enjoyed Beacon Pines to your heart's content.
And please do so, because it's really great.
Oh my God, right? Okay, you guys. So I know I was introduced to this game by Panda, and I was not sure what to expect for it. It was just like, you have to play this for Next Fest. It was as a demo at the time. And I jumped in. I thought it was going to just be another like point and click any game novel narrative story. And I have literally been obsessed since playing the demo. Maybe not as obsessed as Panda, but what got you guys the most excited about this game? Because I know it's been teased for quite a while now.
Okay. So yes, it's fair to say that I am extremely head over heels for this game, explicitly because I think I've played every demo iteration that I've been able to get my hands on multiple times. You know, we definitely, like, I was first exposed to it at the BAE event in 22. It was the beginning of this year, I think. But I found it like halfway through 21, I think. And to this day, like, I have had severe FOMO at the fact that, like, I missed the Kickstarter. It's like the only Kickstarter that I'm like, wow, I missed out big. And so honestly, like, the art was like the main thing that drew me in, but I think it was just, they did such a good job curating the demo with making me being like, oh my God, like, what's going on within Beacon Pines? Like, the demo was so robust as it is. I think I spent like 2 hours on it, just kind of like poking around, looking at the different things. And honestly, the developer community, Hiding Spot, has just been so interactive with their community, and they were really great. They come and hung out in my Twitch stream and answered some questions, and, you know, didn't answer questions on some other things, you know. And it was just, it really got me heavily interested, not just in the story and the art, but just kind of like the community that they were able to build around it. And so I think that was really what got my engine revved on the game. Was I was like, I have to watch this like a hawk, you know, the mechanics and everything involved with it. I was just, it was a game, visual novel style, that was done in a form that I had not yet personally experienced, I guess. And so that, plus a little bit of super sleuth and mystery kind of thing, I was just all in.
Yeah.
It first appeared on my radar when I played the demo for Ludonarracon in 21.
Oh.
And yeah, it's such a good demo that it was just keep an eye on it since then.
It kind of ticks all the boxes when it comes to demos. Like, sometimes I feel the demos, they either don't tell you enough, or they, like, all of the excitement of the game is in the demo, and then release, and it's like, there wasn't much more to this. But I felt a lot with this game that they gave you enough to draw you in. And just like you touched on too, the art style. Oh my God, can we talk about just how beautiful this game is?
Yes. Repeatedly.
Repeatedly.
If you guys, like, this is for you guys, but honestly, like, all the podcast listeners too, the artist's name is Isla Harding. You can find them on Twitter and Instagram. That's where I have been following them. They do just stunning illustrative and character artwork. I mean, just absolutely, like, there's a reason that she was picked. I have been absolutely like just floored. Obviously they're very well versed in expressions, and just like they really capture that like soft kind of like fluffy nature. And I had the pleasure of hopping into one of their dev chats, I guess. And they were discussing, you know, all of the different mechanics and things and anything Beacon Pines. And so I had asked them, you know, when they got involved, and Isla has been there like since the beginning. Basically, they saw her art and was like, this is who we want to do our game. And through most iterations and character concept work, a lot of the characters were decided long before I think the story was solidified. That was so cool to me. And they said that they asked her for some character concept art. She sent it, and they were like, this is it. Like, Luca was one of the first ones that was like created. It was originally supposed to kind of be this little RPG, 2D RPG kind of style, you know, with fighting and mechanics and magic and all of this different stuff. And the art was still very similar, but they had like obviously little sprites and like fighting mechanics. And then as they started to kind of flesh out the characters, and Harding put so much like detail into them and everything, they were like, man, you know, this would make a really cool, like, you know, narrative or visual novel, or a little bit more than what they had been doing with the original concept. And so just hearing that and being able to watch how a lot of the art kind of influenced the flow of the game and kind of what the concept was supposed to be was just absolutely amazing. I was like, this is the coolest thing, hearing the behind the scenes with all of that. And knowing that the artist was so closely involved with them from the beginning to really carry through that very cohesive look. And the fact that like she's an illustrator and this is a storybook. Like that
was what I was gonna say, is that the feel,
it fits it so
Like
perfectly.
if you get involved in Beacon Pines in the world of it, but like it, as far as like the concept of the story being told through a book, it feels like a book. It looks like a book. It looks like illustrations you would find in some, you know, like children's novel, but not like childish. It's just, I loved that. That was so immersive and just so cool to hear that. I know I did read something too, that like the original place for the game is not where it ended up, because the game said that's not what the kind of game I want to be, and that's how they developed it that way.
Yes.
To me, it felt like being read a bedtime story.
Yes. Their decision to pull in Kristen as like a narrator, like they could have done like full voice acting, you know, or something like that, but just having the narrator and then you be able to like read for the characters and stuff. I think that was an amazing decision. Also, she knocked it out of the park. Holy crap.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And like also in line with that too, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't fully narrated. Only the parts of the book that were narration were narrated. So sometimes it cuts in as the story is being told, like dialogue between the characters is cut off by vocal narration. But the voices, quote unquote, the sound design for the voices of the characters themselves. I mean, when the first time I met Jeff, I was like, yep, that sounds like Jeff. That sounds like what he'd sound like. So I love that it was thoughtful, that it wasn't just the same tonality or the same cadence for every single character for the voicing as far as the sound design of it went. It was a few people, like a few characters in the game. It was just like, oh, wow, that was spot on. Like, holy, that was cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though it's just noises, you can sort of tell too.
Yeah, but they really like did a great job with like, I guess I liked that they kind of gave them vocal tone, I guess, rather than me sitting here like, I wonder who this person sounds like. It's like you really like gelled with who they like gave a voice to or a tone to their voice. Like you said, Jeff showed up and I was like, crotchety old man, and that's exactly what it sounded like, you know?
You can like, you could just imagine what their voice would sound like. And that was actually, for me and my playthrough that I did for YouTube on this, I normally read the character narration and I give them voices, but I ended up reading nothing. I enjoyed the sounds of their talking so much that I just kind of let that play, and I let the people who choose to watch that playthrough like hear that over my voice trying to make an impression.
Oh, really? That's
As
an
like, and
interesting
so I
take.
just interjected like my own thoughts and stuff as the game was going on because I was like, this is just too cool. I don't want to talk over this.
I love that. I still
Yeah.
ended up reading for the characters, but I usually would let their little like meh, meh, meh play out before I started.
Mm,
uh,
that's the
Is
high
that
tech term.
like 13 hours?
what was it, Ari?
Is that why your playtime's like over 13 hours?
Okay, listen, I got called out so hard about that. Like the whole game, when we got the creator packet, obviously, you know, they say, oh yeah, it's going to take like 5 to 7 hours. And I usually I go, okay, it's probably going to be 1.5 times, you know, to 2 when I play it on stream, because I know we're going to talk, we're going to share conspiracy theories, you know, I was taking my sweet time with it. But when I finally looked at like my final log on the game playthrough is literally 13.1 hours on Steam. And I popped into like, you know, the IGC and everybody was like, oh yeah, how long did it take for Beacon Pines? And some people were like, oh yeah, it took me like 2 to 4 hours. And I was sitting here like, what? How? And then when I was like, oh man, I was like, well, I 100%ed it. So maybe that's why, you know, and I was like, yeah, it took me like a whopping 13 hours, but I read everything, you know, we shared conspiracy theories, we did XYZ. And then all of a sudden, like, they were like, oh, I 100%ed it too. And I was like, okay, listen, I didn't speed run the game. Like,
Right. Well, and also I think that if you're playing it for other viewers, you let the dialogue grow. And like, I'm a fast reader, and I even noticed when I was watching back. Even noticed when I was watching back through my first video that I posted on YouTube, I was clicking through things. If I was just a, you know, dear gentle reader sitting down to watch it, I might have been clicking through too quickly for them to read what the characters had been saying, because my reading is much faster. But I think if people are super fast readers and they're not playing for somebody else, maybe it was possible to get through.
That's fair.
Because I know for me, I think my playthrough was 8 hours total. And I went back. I wanted to 100% it too, but I am at 90%. I am missing one achievement. But
which achievement?
It's the last one that I don't have is the agile angler. I missed 2 charms somewhere, and I don't know how to go back and find them.
So I played it twice, and it was a pretty consistent 10 hours per playthrough.
Okay, I feel way better now.
There were no achievements when I played it the first time, so
yeah,
I feel way better now. So so you know, these people must have been over here speedrun. I read slow.
Don't rush a good thing.
I wasn't, but I was just like, I was so surprised that mine was like, my gameplay was apparently so much longer, like double everyone else's.
I had to go back and do the achievement to leave the fridge open or the tap on. So like
that was the last one I needed. Yeah, I had to go all the way back to the beginning, and then I had to scroll. I think my playthrough on Twitch technically went like 20 to 30 minutes extra because I just had to scroll through so much dialogue to get that one.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was finding too. When I noticed that I think I'm missing 2 charms, is I don't necessarily know where to go back to find them. And so it's kind of hard to go through and pick up like what section I might need to go into to find them at. But before we move on too much about the gameplay, I do also want to stop and honor the sound design of this game. Oh my God. There were moments where like I was feeling tense, and then like the slow music swells in, and I'm like, oh, this is so perfect. It's so fitting. It set the mood.
Especially in those dream sequence. I think that's where they were able to like crescendo that music really intensely. And then it's just that big black screen, you know, and the narrator is reading, and I just remember I was sitting there and I was like clicking through the dialogue like on bated breath, you know, because it was like so slow and drawn out. And then their decision, and when I say slowly like ramped the music in those situations, I mean like I would have been reading for a good 2 to 3 minutes before I started hearing the music, but it was there, you know, and then it was deafening, you know, and it was like, oh my gosh, like the intensity that they were able to bring. Whew, So good.
Yeah, like there were moments where I'm like, oh my God, my heart is racing, and I'd have to stop and like focus for a second and be like, oh, it's because like the music is
Sure.
controlling my emotion right now. The music is putting me into the scene so well that it's becoming very immersive, and I really, really love that.
It was pretty varied, but like fit each scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think. What I think that I liked about it a lot too is that it wasn't. Sometimes when you are, especially in like visual novels, when you go into a scene that's intense, it just throws the music at you right as you get into the scene.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. I felt like they were so cognizant of keeping it subtle enough to not overwhelm the gameplay or distract you from the gameplay, but to like pull your emotions and pull your focus in as dialogue was progressing or as the scene was getting more intense.
Yeah. Well, and not even in those intense spots, you know?
Oh yeah, some of the sweet spots were like, oh my God, the emotional music. And
not to mention it was definitely a driving force for Luca later in the story, you know, with the song that he shared with his mom, you know, and everything. It was and it was all like curated. It all felt like it was lovingly crafted to fit the game in those scenes, like a movie almost, to be honest.
Yeah. For sure.
Before we go on to the gameplay as well, I wanted to mention the animations.
Oh, yes.
Like when I started the game and you're going through the dandelions and he's sort of skipping and sneezes, and it's just so cute. That was one of the first things that struck me about the game.
Well, it's like the motions of the characters as they're, you know, when you actually have control and you're going through, you know, you're moving Luca around the story. He's just childlike the way that he runs around, and like it's so cute, and it kind of gives that like, again, that sort of childlike story feel of, it wasn't stiff movement, it was carefree, it was bouncy, it was, again, that sneeze in the dandelion field was just so dang cute.
Oh yeah, and if we're talking about like the animations that each of the individual sprites had, it brought them so much more to life, I want to say. Especially, you know, you can play through a game like this or a visual novel or have these little sprites and everything, and then just having the addition of like those little motions. Like one of my favorite things, and it was in the demo, and it was one of the first things that really just locked me in for the game, was when you go and sit on the big comfy chaise in front of the fire and you're like, you know, kicking your little feet, and that was so cute. And it was like, oh my gosh, you get your first charm, and it was adorable. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have to go and get up, so you tap the space bar, and he doesn't just snap to where he's supposed to be. He doesn't just like speed through or anything. He slowly slides off the couch, you know, in that very childlike manner. And, you know, just it was so cute, and it was so connective, and it was so wholesome. And I just remember sitting there like, that is unique, and it brought the character so much more to life for me, you know, than he already had been, you know. And it was just like, wow, the fact that they took the time to add these little details, these little animations, the spots that they had talked about in their little like voxel sandbox areas to where you can lean against a post and it zooms in, and you really get to like drink in the environment on top of that. It was just so good.
For sure. So that kind of goes into then the gameplay. I know we mentioned one of the mechanics is that you can control Luca at certain parts of the story. He runs around the town. You can bring him through certain areas of the map via your controller or keyboard. And I think the defining feature of this game for sure are those charms.
Who wants to talk about
what were your guys' impressions with the charms? We're just all in awe of it.
I didn't know, because like I wanted to pass the buck, I guess. I talked a lot about the animations and everything, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about the charm mechanic. I loved it.
I like the fun of actually just collecting the words, the charms.
Yeah.
Itself. And then it's sort of utilized through that mini fishing game.
I went on record to my community, like, about how that was the only fishing mechanic that I've ever liked.
I said that too, because fishing mini games, whenever I've played things, fishing mini games usually frustrate me, and I'm just so upset with them. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
it's the only fishing mini game that I have actually like been successful at.
We
And then I
have
find it hilarious that that's the only achievement I haven't gotten on Steam. Because
we
I
have
miss
a
listening terms.
we have a full-on quote and like clip on my channel that my viewers throw at me all the time because I play a lot of cozy games, play a lot of farming games. There's always a fishing mechanic in every game I play. And I literally am like, fishing mechanics are the worst and I hate them. Like I was like 100% like in that camp. And as soon as we got to that, I was like, this is the only fishing mechanic I have ever found useful and enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I love that the charms give you sort of a collector's aspect throughout the game, kind of like Ari was saying. It gives you something to hunt for, so it entices you to explore each area, not once or twice, but every single time you go into it to just see if will an interaction spike one? Is there a new area to look for to get one from? And then just the way that they drive the story. So if you haven't played the game or if you have, the charms that you collect throughout the story end up being turning points. They're key factors in the way that the story tree is built. And they give you points and time to go back to and try something out if you don't get the ending you desire. And I know that there are games where you can time travel, you can go back, you can change how things are. But this just was such a cute way of like, sometimes when the turning points would come, you wouldn't I really didn't know, oh my gosh, how is this going to go? And it was exciting to go back and play it again to get the other endings or to get the different branches from it.
Or when you go ahead.
Singular word.
Sorry, one more time.
Just the importance of like a singular word to the story and
yes,
the surprising way that they play out. Like sometimes they don't go the way you expect them to.
Right.
Yeah.
That was super interesting to me too. Is like there were times where I'm like, well, obviously this is the best choice and this is how it's going to go. And you play through it and you get an ending and you're like, wait, no.
Well, there's even that one ending with Iggy to where they were like, sometimes the right choice is what feels like the right choice is the wrong one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh God, Iggy. Oh, we'll get to characters later, but
I loved that because there would be so many instances to where I would get a charm and sometimes I'd be like, oh, I wonder where we're going to use this one. Oh, I wonder where this one is going to come. But I would get, it was like a little Easter egg hunt because you wouldn't just get them from dialogue or talking to characters. Sometimes you would get them with interacting with the environment around you. And so not only was I left sitting here like, oh, I wonder if this is going to be a charm that I use at the fishing spot, or if this is going to be a charm that I use to like change some dialogue, or if this is going to be a turning point charm. And then sometimes we would get some and I would be like, oh, I can't wait to use this here. Or I would think, oh, this is the charm we've been looking for that turning point that we had that issue, and it was so exciting because, it never lost its excitement. It never lost its like enticement. Whenever I would get a charm, I would get so excited and I would open our pack and I'd be like, where am I going to use this? And I loved how they kind of incorporated that. And then it was a mechanic that never got tired,
Yes. Yeah. It never felt laborious to go looking for them. And I know there was one specific point, I think it was around one of the chapter 4s, that there's a turning point where I only had one charm and I got almost to what I thought was the end of the game. And I was like, no, there has to be more turning points for this. And progressing through the game a little bit further yielded another one. And I opened up the tree and I'm like, that's it. That's where it goes.
Yeah. And while we're on that topic, the 3D storybook, like the aspect that you zoom out to look at this little book laying on the wooden table next to the little candle that you actively watch go down each time you open the book. Oh, it just really brought that whole fairy tale, illustrative narrative like to life for me.
It was whimsical for sure. I loved that. I definitely noticed too at turning points in the game when you would go back to the narrator would be like, absolutely not. That's not how this can end. And it would bring you back to the book. The book itself, if you paid attention to the page numbers, kind of corresponded with like how far back you were going in the story or how far forward you were going in the story. And I liked that visual a lot too, because I think it helped kind of in my mind be like, oh, okay, so last I looked, we were on page 72, and now we're going back to page 56. So we're jumping back quite a ways right now into like, okay, so I know there were times too where I was like, okay, so that means we're in this part of the story and these things have happened, but we know it, but they don't know it, but
yeah, and I had to like keep track of those timelines too, right? Like what timeline are we in? What have we done? Who has done what,
Where is Rolo?
Keeping track of what Luca knows compared to what we as the player know.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that is just such a cool mechanic too, because it gives you sort of like that feeling of, I can't remember what the term for it is in movies, where something but the characters don't. Is that
third person perspective?
No, there's a specific type of film where like you've seen other things happen in the movie, so something that the character doesn't know, so it kind of it draws you in. It's a filming technique, it's a movie technique. And I felt like it did so good with the different timelines too, because like there's certain times where I'm like, wait, what do we know about Gran in this timeline? Like, wait a second. And it was so cool to unweave that together. But like, segueing that into the characters themselves, because there's so many characters. Obviously, there's main characters, there's tertiary characters, secondary characters, but every character in this they had so much personality and heart put into them. Even the characters you don't like, I will kind of start out and say that one of my favorite characters, and I didn't catch on to this until about midway through my game, was, I can't remember her name, the alligator at Reading by the Fountain.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it like Harper, or it started with an H? I thought.
Miss Hatch.
Yes.
Is Ms. Hatch. Ms. Hatch reading her book by the fountain. If you had recently changed a storyline and you run by her, the snippet she reads you from the book is almost always foreshadowing what's coming next, or kind of hinting at something you've been through already. And it was like, chef's kiss. Mwah, beautiful.
Yeah, they were great.
That little subtle thing.
Like a great little NPC kind of nod to that. I loved that. I remember finding her. I think I found it in the demo that I had played, and I was like, oh, I wonder if this is going to become like a mechanic later in the game. And I absolutely loved Miss Hatch.
Yeah.
But who's your least favorite character?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good. I have to think about that. I mean, it was really hard to like Iggy. I feel like Iggy got a redemption arc.
You feel like he got an entire redemption arc. It was all Iggy.
I know, like two different variations on a redemption arc for him.
Yep.
But like, can't stand a bully, and like even his voice in the game is annoying.
Yeah. What about you, Ari?
I don't know, Mr. Nuncreed.
For your least favorite or your favorite?
No, not my favorite. He's pretty slimy.
Yeah,
he's good in the end, but like
in one.
yeah, and only kind of.
Well.
Kerr! Oh my God, Kerr! Every time Kerr came on the screen, I wanted to punch him in the face.
You mean that winning smile?
William Kerr. Yeah. There's a reason that his last name is Kerr. I know it.
It's very fitting. What about your favorite character?
Montesquieu.
What was it? Oh, yeah.
Patrick C. Montesquieu, yeah.
The Patsy, yeah. Did you guys happen to poke in that? Because I poked in every freaking nook and cranny. So when you go into the library, did you guys catch the little nod of the book that he wrote?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So if you go, I guess for everybody, if you go into the library and you take the time, as I did, to stop at every bookshelf, it'll read off different titles. And later on you have to hunt for one and everything, but I don't know if that one pops up. And if you read one of the titles, it'll say like, you know, greatest acting moments or something written by Patrick C. Montesquieu. And it it just cracked me up because I remember when we got to that part, you know, at the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. So like serious major spoilers, you know, you get to the end and you find out that Mr. Kerr is actually Patrick C. Montesquieu. I screamed. Like I actually, I don't know why I got so like worked up at that. It just hit me like a ton of bricks that I was like, that's the guy that wrote the book about himself. You know, and I was just like, my chat was like, what? And I was like, in the library. I was like, he is vapid. Like,
Yeah.
Not just any book, like the artist of our time or something.
Yes, yeah. It was something. It was, yeah. But he like wrote it. It cracked me up. I was just like, are you kidding me? That's this dude.
I love that. The clipboards in general, the clipboards were so, I loved them. They were
Iconic.
so wonderful.
Iconic. I was like, there they are. There's my little hive mind.
Well, I was kind of right. I was kind of hoping. It was, of course, this, when they were red pandas. I was like, panda. There was part of me that wanted, and maybe I missed it. I wanted some explanation as to why they are all identical.
Right? Yeah.
You know,
I didn't find it either.
Other than, well, I think other than it's just, you know, the oh my God, why can't I think of the name? The company PH.
Oh, Perennial Harvest.
Yeah, Perennial. I don't know why I couldn't think of the P word. Perennial Harvest itself, it kind of to me just seemed like it was a nod to them just sort of being corporate yes men.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that. Did also anybody catch the fact with anagrams and stuff that Perennial Harvest is a anagram for Sharper Valentine? Or no, it was, what
is it?
Grim? No. One of my moderators pointed it out. Perennial Harvest is like an anagram. Yeah, it's for Sharper Valentine.
For Sharper Valentine.
Yes, it is an anagram for Sharper Valentine.
God.
Yeah, I lost. What was it?
Just revelation.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, one of my because he's really into puzzles too, and so one of my moderators was like, "Oh my God, Perennial Harvest is an anagram for Sharper Valentine." I was like, "You're shitting me." Like, and it was just there, and he was like, I knew that the logos were familiar, and I just kept saying, well, Perennial Harvest just bought out like Valentine fertilizer and all this different stuff, and he was like, nope, it means Sharper Valentine.
It means he's here somewhere.
Yeah, I know, right?
That blew my mind. I kind of figured out the underground secrets when like as Rolo figures it out in the game, I figured it out, and like both of us scream it. Like I'm clicking through the game, and we're both like, "Ah!" Like, am I Rolo?
Okay, I feel like we're ebbing into the story, but I do want to ask Ari what her favorite character is. So we're gonna go rein it back real fast.
I quite liked Rolo, to be honest.
Lovable, dope, dependable friend.
Well-meaning, flawed.
He was a very well-rounded character in that aspect. I love that.
Oh, their adorable little fight that they have in like the
I cried.
Yeah, they had a little fight, and then like the whole having to go and make up and like the freaking
grand gesture.
I can't think of the word. Scavenger hunt he gets sent on.
Yeah,
he trades all his Halloween candy.
Yep.
I did immediately, if anybody watches through my Let's Play, the first time we meet Beck, I'm like, well, I'm in love with her. She's mine now forever.
That's what, she 100% was my favorite character. The moment that we met her in the demo, I was like, she's my ride or die. She is ride or die. I was like, this right here, this is my pal, man. That 100%, I was in Beck's camp like from the start.
Oh yeah, I loved Beck so much, and I just I also decided that I want to age beautifully and gracefully and look like grandma when I'm done. If I look like Graham
Juniper,
when I'm older, if I look like Juniper when
right?
I'm older,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be really pleased.
Yeah. Juniper slash Eleanor, I guess, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But yes, yeah. Gran was a top tier character. She cracked me
for
up.
sure. Oh yeah. Yeah, I had mixed feelings about Grandma's story arc. I know as we kind of move into talking about the story, just sort of for people who are catching up with this, the general premise of Beacon Pines is, you start out in this scene with Luca talking to his father, who's passed away 6 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's just throws you into this adorable, adorable game where things are brought up like Luca's mom has been missing for quite some time now. So Graham has come to live with him and Graham is taking care of him now. And it's just, oh gosh, it just throws you into the friendship, like adventures with Rolo right away. And oh, so good, so good.
Yeah. And it was like it yeah. There's so much that I could say just about Rolo and Luca's friendship and relationship. Like I think that though, to sum it up, other than his little like, grand gesture of like apologizing, like really truly, like so good, was when they were just talking and how that fight like culminated and how then the apology kind of like came to be, was where he was like, when I found out that you were hanging out with Bex or you needed a new person and that I couldn't be that comfort anymore, he was like, not even that he was scared, he was just like, I was worried that I wasn't enough or helping you, through
that
this
I couldn't
tough
help
time
you anymore.
Yeah, and it was just so sad because like Rolo is like a true character and a friend, and he's like, there for Luca and was through like the whole thing with, him recovering from his dad dying, and they've been childhood friends, and the flaming chicken coop, disaster. And
chicken coop disaster.
I think Rolo
he takes it like a champ.
Yeah, I think Rolo like 100% fits in the Samwise Gamgee like bracket of friend,
Oh yeah.
he was so good from like the start to finish. And then Luca, Luca's good to him too. They have their little spat and everything, but I just love that they were just totally there for each other, like from start to finish. And they welcomed Beck in, and Beck fit in as the trio and everything, and it was fantastic. She was a great addition. But it was just their whole like relationship and like, dialogue with one another was always just like really, really heartwarming, I guess, to me.
And even when, I know we've talked about the fight a little bit. It's not like a huge part of the game, but it was written so well that
it was so memorable.
It was such a cool point too, because like even when they finally get through their fight and they're talking to each other, like you said with Luca's just as good of a friend to Rolo. And he's like, I'm not going to hold it against you. I understand. It was just such healthy conflict resolution.
Oh, yeah.
It was healthy conversation about, hey, we're both allowed to have big emotions here. And now we're at a resolution. And I love games that demonstrate conflict resolution in that kind of productive way where, hey, we're both having emotions right now and both of our emotions are valid. And we both accept that maybe we said some things we shouldn't. So let's just kind of hug and remember why we're friends.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I was, I don't know. It was just really wholesome, and it was always like really well written, like dialogue, and it felt very natural. And I think it also kind of pulled back to the childlike nature of it too, like they dealt with it in a healthy way, but it was also still dealt with in a very like, are we still friends? I got you these balloons, like, are you mad at me? I'm sorry, I was a horse's ass. Like it was just so cute the way that they like handled everything, and the fact that all the townspeople were just like in on it, and they were like absolutely 100%. Like Rolo's doing what Rolo does, and they know that like Luca and Rolo are like best friends, and it was just like so it was so cute. It gave it that like small town vibe, I guess.
In general, I think one of my favorite parts with the whole storytelling aspect of this is of obviously the tree with the charms and the branches and the different paths you can take. But I also really enjoyed that there were certain times where I felt kind of hopeless in the game and not in a bad way. Hopeless and like every ending that I'm coming up with is bad and like having to go back and go through certain things and like knowing there was a piece of the story that I wasn't getting yet. And as I continued playing through it, realizing that I have to progress this side of the story before I'm going to be able to go back and progress the part of the story that I really want to see the ending in. And I loved that it drew you back. It was a lot of times with, choose your own adventure books, which I loved as a kid. I lived in those books. You get to such a concrete ending that you can start the book from the beginning again and you can read it to try and get a different ending, but not enough changes. So it's not as exciting to get a new ending. And I thought that even when I got to dead ends in the story, it would be the end. And the narrator was just as distressed as you that, no, that can't be how this ends. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And you'd go back and be like, okay. And I'd click through the tree and be like, oh my gosh, what new charms do I have that I can try in another area? And it just kept pulling you back the exciting way that my brain was going a million miles an hour, trying to be like, okay, well, I have to jump back to this timeline, which is only in chapter 4, but the timeline I was just in was chapter 7. So I haven't seen Graham come out of the Sharper estate, and I haven't seen Tolliver. Like Tolliver hasn't been in the basement yet, and I haven't gotten threatened by Nun Creed, and like all of this stuff. Like, okay, so I have to remember that Luca doesn't know this, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh my gosh, is he going to find it out? How is he going to find out? Or how is it going to change? Like, oh, just so engaging. Such engaging storytelling.
I also like how it kind of, it was sneaky and how jumping back between timelines like that also then really heavily influenced like your decision making and your hesitation sometimes in creating some of the like scenarios that you did. I'm a bleeding heart. Like I've always been there. And so, when we went through like the redemption arc with Iggy and everything, and I was like, I just remember like, then, you're in I was thinking about that because you play through that and then you're in like the final, like, countdown scene, right? In the arc, this is it. This is you run into the end and you have to get Iggy's help and Jeff's help and Tish's help and everybody. And so when we went to go and talk to Iggy, I was just like, some of the charms that I wanted to use in the discussion with him, I was thinking back to his character development arc. And my moderators and my chat was always like, Heather, that was a different timeline, Iggy. I was like, but he's good deep down. I don't want to do this, and it was just like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to say hurtful things. He just wants to come to the treehouse. Like, and so like sometimes my influence would be then colored by those other interactions with those characters. And I was just like, I wanted to pick the timelines that I knew where they like had made those kind of decisions or shown those character and stuff, and they hadn't technically in this timeline yet, but I was like,
but you knew it was within them. You knew exactly. You kind of have in the back of your mind that when Iggy was pushed, Iggy turned out to be a decent guy.
Yeah. And, everybody was friends in the end and everything, but I just remember that whole bit. And I struggled through that dialogue because I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. And he was still being just a little jerk. And then at the very end, after Luca left and everything, he's like, did you hear we got invited to the treehouse, Tish? And I was like, I knew it. I knew he was there.
And Tish is so excited too. Like, goes from saying yup, she has a whole sentence. That's how excited she is.
I loved that. Oh,
Ari, what was your favorite part of the story?
Oh, blimey, that's a big question.
Yeah, that is. I know, question.
Right? On the spot a bit.
Or at least a part that stood out to you for sure.
We can start there.
The bit where he realizes he's been visiting his dad and is like in the wrong place.
Oh my god, that broke my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad.
Oh. So you get to a part of the story where you realize, in sort of a Twin Peaks sort of moment, that the entire town has been moved. And so where Luca thinks he's been visiting his father's grave, he has this moment where he realizes that it's just a headstone. He hasn't actually been visiting his father. And
It
just the
hits hard.
heartbreak.
Yeah. Yep. Especially
One of the-
since the headstone was fake, but the tree was real. And so it was
Yes.
that added element of the
He
fact
took
that
the
he was
tree
like,
away from
yeah, you
him.
destroyed my dad's favorite spot, you know, and it was
Yeah.
just like, it was like adding insult to injury. But I again, I really want to hear what Ari thought about the whole arc. Because that revelation was hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably the most sort of poignant moment in it for me. Like, whereas sort of Kat said, game gave her all sorts of feels, and that was probably the bit where I was like most emotional, and the most
The
emotive.
feelsiest part.
How
Yeah.
did you feel about the reconciliation in that area then, Ari, at the end?
Oh, it was a really nice moment with him and his gran saying like he'd like this tree better because his favorite people planted it, and just just felt right and like a nice way to round up that part of the story.
I feel like that too that's another part where I cried. I didn't cry as much. But I cried at that part as well, because it's even when he's saying his final like goodbyes to his dad, he's like, hey, so time's progressing and I'm not going to be able to come here as often. And you understand. I know you understand. And I'm like,
Oh man.
Luca,
Yeah.
just take my heart right out of my chest, child.
Yeah. Talk about getting wrecked. That was, you know, I think the two parts that because I mean, I guess it's fair to say that like I really enjoyed how it was a very fun, upbeat, like, you know, campy kind of mystery game, you know, in a lot of areas. And, you know, we had a lot of the comic relief and everything and the whodunit and whatnot. I really appreciate that they brought it low with really serious topics at times, you know, and I think the parts that I got super emotional at was the whole like, the first one that hit me really hard was the interaction with Bex and the storm, you know, where they were like,
oh my God, they have
right?
a garden state moment screaming out the window together.
Yeah. Screaming the stuff that they struggle with and, you know, their you know, personal thorns and stuff. They were just kind of like throwing to the elements, literally yelling into the void, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that because it made it really feel like that childlike, you know, younger self, like the world is ending, or, you know, like you feel these big emotions and it's so hard to sort through them sometimes that, you know, just doing those primal screams out in a window feels right, you know? And I really liked that. I really resonated with that. And I just thought that was such a cute interaction. And it wasn't like just a nod, like it was a whole thing that they'd spent time to devote to that, you know, not getting yanked around by the universe and not letting these, you know, what feels like unforeseen forces like dictate what, you know, all of this stuff that happens. And then that final scene was the other one that really just like hit me because it was such a quiet culmination to everything. You know, the epilogue was such a cute addition. You got to connect with everybody and see where they are. But then, you know, Gran and Luca having that quiet moment of like, you know, it's finished. You know, we've fixed and healed over these areas that were so tense in our lives. And I just, it was really sad, you know, but like in a really like wholesome, heartwarming kind of aspect, I guess.
Yeah. I think that was one thing that I also feel the storytelling does really well is it's cute and it's campy and it's fun, but it also is very raw and serious, and it doesn't throw it in your face. There's usually a buildup for it in a very meaningful way. And that leads me into my favorite part in the story, which is where I literally just sat and like openly cried. If you're looking for it, it's part 4 of my playthrough, and it's at like an hour 15 into that playthrough part, and I realize what's happening literally I think like 5 minutes ahead of the dialogue, where, again, spoiler for everybody here, I suddenly start realizing I'm putting things together in my head about how in certain timelines people are like, we haven't seen Gran before this. We've never met Gran before this. In the library, they find a death record for someone named J. Harford, and they're like, wait, that's Grandma's name. No, it can't be. And all of this stuff going on. And then you realize, well, why Gran though? Like who is this? Who is she really? What's her real motive here? And I'm been upset the entire game about thinking of her as a villain or thinking that she's working against Luca. And it made me angry. I'm like, if they make it that it's all like Gran's doing something wrong, I'm going to be so upset. And you come to one of the final scenes where you find out the ooze that they've been experimenting with for the crops and for the harvest has the propensity to age people. And you get a hint at that when it gets splashed on Beck earlier, and a little bit of Beck's hair goes gray and she runs off. And it all starts clicking in my head as this is happening. And I'm almost going to cry again. It all starts clicking in my head as it's happening. And I'm like, oh my God, his mom's missing. This stuff ages people. She's been fighting against it since Walt died. Oh my God, Gran is mom. And I'm just like, oh shit, don't tell me that's what it is. And then it happens. And there's this sweet, tender, touching moment with the humming of a lullaby between them at an emotional moment in the game. And I just lost it. I lost it.
Cool reveal.
Oh, such a cool reveal. And it was even though I had figured it out, and I was like, oh my God, I figured this part out. The way they reveal it in the game, chills, just absolute chills. Such beautiful story design.
Yeah, those climaxes, they always did a great job revealing them. That's so interesting because I kind of want to talk a little bit, I guess, about what everybody's like sleuthing path was. Because I remember as I started I'm big into mysteries. Yeah. I love them. And
the Charlie Day board with strings and pictures behind you.
Oh yeah, no. So if you guys haven't seen on my Twitter, I made a board. For Beacon Pines. No, 100%. Like the Charlie Day gif my friends send me all the time because it's my favorite thing to do with movies and series and everything. And they're like, Heather, please don't like reveal the ending even when you know it. Like we know you're going to know it, but please don't say. And I'm like, no, I would never. But yes, you're right. And I just remember, I think it was shortly after, the whole Bex thing and, how it aged her hair gray and everything, and it kind of mutated Iggy, there was all that. And I was like, wow, there's so many interesting properties. And we were sitting outside. It was right before going to have dinner with Bex's family. And we were outside the Valentine residence, and I was sitting there and it hit me, and you could see it. I was just sitting there. I was like, hang on. And I was like, I'm going to make a theory, and I'm just going to put it off in the weeds because I'm not going to lie, it even feels far-fetched for me. But I was like, what if the Juniper, quotes, was exposed to this ooze, right? And she was actually Luca's missing mom. And I made that comment, and I was like, I'm going to put it in the weeds, and I'm not going to address it anymore. And that's like where I left it. And so when we got to that part and it was like culminating to that, I was like shaking because I was like, this one theory that I like just theoretically, like theorized, like presumed, I was like, this feels like even in the weeds for me. And then the fact that it was like what it was. And I don't know about you guys, but at that moment, that's when I all pieced it together. And I was like, Solomon is sharper. I will bet my entire savings on it. Like,
see, I didn't get there until there was one thing Solomon said in passing.
Sure.
As I was coming back to the big speech or something that happened, and I was just like, no.
Yeah, that was my sleuthing path. As soon as I figured that out, I was like, Solomon is sharper. And my chat went, no. And I was like, yes. And I was so mad about it, too, because I kept equating. I was like, look at this little baby boy. Look at Solomon. Look how cute he is. Look how he looks just like my dog. I love him. And then he turned out to be the villain. I was like, damn it. Like, he looks just like Kage. I was like, could be a spitting image.
I will laugh a little bit because you get 3 choices at the end of how you deal with Solomon's final speech. And they're all, the first one I picked was quote unquote the right ending that, concluded the game. I didn't accidentally pick the other 2 because I remembered the unlucky penny.
I did too. I was going to ask you guys what you ended up choosing.
I had to go back and play the other 2 endings though, and they were really funny.
Yep, same. Ari, what was your final choice at the vial?
On my first playthrough, I chose change, and then I did the other 2 on the second play.
Okay, so we all thought the unlucky penny. Then I'm glad to know that.
Well, and I thought too, because I mean it's a vial of mysterious goo that may or may not age him, and also I was devastated when they're in the founder's office and Beck just like concedes and gives over the vial. I'm like, she had to have done something with it. She wouldn't. She's not a snitch. She's a good friend. She's a part of the trio now. There's no way she would have done this. And I'm
not
like,
to mention
Beck,
she's sneaky as hell.
I know. I'm like, Beck, you're more sly than this. You can't give up. And like, I'm arguing with her as I'm playing. Like, why would you do this to your new friends, Beck? No. Oh, so good.
Really is.
Also, the narrator sort of says this is a story about change several times throughout, so it sort of felt
that was definitely
end on that note.
Yeah, that was definitely like the running theme, and I do like how they mentioned it so much, I guess, and kind of like did all those callbacks within it being changed, and that it's technically like the first charm you use.
And it's also in William's speech. He talks about the 3 C's of the town, and we're going to add the 4th C. The 4th C is change, and so I feel like all of that callback, all of that tie-in, it was meaningful, and you come to the end, and that's the true path, and such a beautiful epilogue.
Oh, it was really good. Did you guys have like, I guess, even if it ended to like, let's say a negative ending, did you guys have a favorite like branching path that maybe didn't like I say like culminate to the end, but you really enjoyed, I guess, because they all kind of had an end, they did end and you had to go back and change some things and stuff. But did you have like a favorite, I guess, that you took in the early stages, before you were in endgame, I want to say?
The path with Iggy's sort of storyline when he gets a bit mutated and that was probably one of my favorite.
I would agree with that.
Why was it do you have, I guess, anything that sticks out to you that you really enjoyed from it?
Just his character arc and that sort of redemption, and that, I don't know, the moment where you let him go is just like, no, didn't want to do it.
I know. I hate that the narrator was even like, sometimes what feels like the right answer is the wrong. I'm like, no, you did no.
And when Iggy says it's okay, Luca.
Yeah.
Though, like in any movie, when there's a character who's sacrificing themselves and they like are bargaining with the hero to like, no, it's fine, let me go. I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I know,
no
right?
emotion. But I think that was very much my favorite too. I kind of wished that some of that branched off a little bit more, because I think that Luca's character development in that is really good too, along with Iggy's. And I remember choosing to save him and it ending and me being like, no, can't have that be an end point. There's nothing I can change to make it. There's nothing I can do to save Iggy.
Yeah.
Some of the endings were devastating.
Yeah, for real though. And it was so
such a cute game.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so cute, but so emotional damage.
Right? Yeah. I really loved the narrator like lamenting at some of those. I feel like the narrator was always on point with how I felt about that ending.
Yeah.
You know, there
I
was
agree.
even that one that was really close to the end where, you know, they were like in tears over it. They were like, this
Yeah.
cannot be, like, I refuse to like believe that this is the end. And
This is my book. I am writing it. This is not the ending.
yeah, it was so good. I also really liked you know, I think my favorite branch was probably the one where we were stuck with Beck over the storm. I feel like we got a lot of, you know, different arcs and some really good insight and everything, but there was also a lot of character development and everything. But within Iggy's arc, you know, we meet that additional character that we don't meet anywhere else. And I kind of want to know what is up with, you know, Nat.
Oh, yes, with Ned.
Yeah, because somebody, one of the people in my chat was like, they're the narrator. And I was like, you know, it feels like that, but also like the narrator has a voice and Nat does not.
Well, and Ned is referred to as he in the
yes.
Yeah.
And so, but they really seem like they were involved some bigger way, and I fully expected to at least see nods or something in the other branches as we kind of like got closer to the end of the story, but we never did. And so I'm curious if, because there was also that kind of like kitschy nod about there being a sequel, you know, before they like pulled back. And so it was like kind of a silly nod almost, and they kind of like laughed it off. And so I'm like, I wonder if this is, because clearly, you know, as we did get to the end, there was no like the Tempest Liquimine, I think was what it was, Liquimine, was still around. It was just kind of locked away, and then you get that post-credit scene and everything with young Solomon and a young Sharper now. And there was all of that involved. And so I'm like, is this actually like a red herring that they like laughed off that there was going to be a sequel? Because we never heard from Nat again outside of that. But they really seemed like they had a bigger piece to play in the background.
Right. Well, and they do allude to in the epilogue, they allude a little bit in the story about how since the source has been sealed, that area should begin to warm and regrow soon. And then your final scene, you see Sharper go and chase the ball, and like they said, oh, his young baby brain was so
10 years later. That's what,
so underdeveloped that he probably doesn't even remember he ever was Sharper.
Yes.
And then that scene happens with him chasing the ball and finding the source, and he just walks over to the source, and it's like the end.
Exactly.
I'm like, come on, Beacon Pines to me, give it.
I like because like I said, it was silly. I think it was something like Beacons to Beacon to Pine or something like that.
Yeah,
it was like the
funny.
Fast and the Furious reference, but yeah, no, I'm really curious if, like I said, like Fellow Traveler and Hiding Spot, you know, they've been sneaky all the way through the demo releases, all the way through the game and everything. You know, I was like, they're hiding things. So I'm thinking that maybe I would like to see more of Nat, or I would like to know if maybe there was supposed to even if it was something like there was supposed to be more and they didn't get around to like completing that. I would just like to know, I guess.
Yeah, because otherwise it kind of feels like so much of the game was so well thought out and the characters were put in places for very specific reasons that is Net just there in case you haven't caught on that, like, we're Twin Peaks and over here.
We're like, Twin Peaks.
Like, you know, is that kind of what it is a little bit, like, if you haven't quite figured it out, which then to me is a little disappointing because it's kind of not creative enough to be up to par with everything else happening in the game. So I kind of do wonder if there had been more intention with Net. And maybe it is for a Beacon Pines 2, or maybe there's, you know, it's just something they weren't able to come back around to before release, or But yeah, so oh my gosh, I feel like I could sit and talk about this game like ad nauseum.
Oh yeah.
Forever and ever and ever. But I would love to kind of get your guys' final thoughts on how overall, like, what are your final impressions of the game? Like, where are you sitting at? How are your emotions doing? How are you feeling now? Like where are we at with the game?
I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It was like cross between an adventure game and a visual novel, and with that unique sort of turning point charm mechanic and all the cuteness you can handle.
All the
Yeah.
cuteness. I love that.
It was. I think for me, it was so much more than I thought it was going to be. It was so I have never openly wept at a game before. I've gotten a little teary or a little sad or a little, but I have never like, well, guys, guess I'm sobbing now. Like you can hear it in my voice. Like, wow, I am having a reaction to this. And it was just, it's a game that I am not going to forget.
Mm.
It is absolutely, of the games I have played this year, by far my absolute favorite game of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean,
my favorites.
Yeah, and I think like for me, I have genuinely been looking forward to this game for so very long.
Yeah.
At this point, like I said,
expected.
What was it?
Was it everything you expected, or?
So that was the whole thing. Like at this point, like I said that I remember playing it at BAE, but I really think that when you said Ludonarracon, I'm like, maybe I played it at Ludonarracon too. I can't remember. I've known about this game for so long, and I had a lot of actually pretty high expectations going into the game, and I was like, man, I'm not gonna lie, if this doesn't meet it, I'm gonna be real sad. Like, because I have genuinely, like I said, it to this day. And I can say, even after playing the game, I'm still absolutely upset that I missed the Kickstarter. Like, I would have backed that at the highest tier that I was able to do so. And I would say yes. Like, in all honesty, it delivered 100% what I was like really hoping for. I got so much out of the gameplay. None of the mechanics, none of it got tired. Maybe when I was achievement hunting because I had to click through a bunch of dialogue, but none of it got tired. None of it got worn out for me. The art was absolutely beautiful. The music delivered. Everything that culminated and came together. And even though I might have sussed out a few things, it was a fun ride theorizing the whole time. And I was so excited for this to come out. And I can say that it still blew me out of the water. And the moment that I got an email about it, any little bit that I got extra, either from like the Twitter page or when they were like, hey, we're going to send you a key, I was like, so pumped to just be involved in whatever capacity. And so when I got that email, I know quite a few creators kind of got the email about like being able to showcase the game and everything. But when I got it, I was head over heels, man, because I was so committed to it at that point, and I still even played the demo while I was waiting, like in my free time. Like I replayed the demo so many different times because I wanted to find all the answers. And I would say, yeah, it totally met every expectation that I had for it, and even exceeded it in several areas. And I just think that by the end of it, when I play a game, especially a narrative heavy one like that, I want the story to come through more than anything. And I feel like what Definitely. I had said, I feel like nothing, I get too wordy right now. I feel like nothing that I haven't said already I could add to, and it was like, when I got to the end of the game, I was like, that was just a good experience. It was just a good story through the whole thing. And I thoroughly enjoyed my playthrough, and I enjoyed the mechanics, and I will be recommending it to everybody.
Oh yeah,
as if I haven't already.
I think I ended saying I'm just so grateful that I got to experience this game.
Yeah,
it just felt like a game that I jump into a lot of video games and I play them and I'm like, yes, this is a video game. Woohoo! You get to the end, I have an accomplishment, I feel achievement. And I got to the end of Beacon Pines, and it was almost like, I mean, again, with the novel theme, it was almost like finishing a really amazing book. and you just close that last page and you set it down and you just have this smile on your face of,
yeah,
wow. And that's how I felt at the end of it.
Yeah, it was emotional for more ways than one. Like the ending was, but I think I was mostly crying at the end because I was just like, I've waited so long. Yeah, I've waited so long to play this and now it's finished. And you're just kind of left in that, you know, somber state of just like, we went on this ride and I don't regret it. And I did. I said, I was like, it's a game well worth experiencing. And so I know we've spoiled a lot and everything, but I am going to reiterate it. Like if we haven't covered a lot, you know, if
there's
you
a lot
have
that was left out.
I highly recommend. It has my full stamp of approval, and I would absolutely take the time out of your, you know, backlog to experience Beacon Pines.
I wholeheartedly recommend it in my review on Indie Hive. It's
for sure. Absolutely. And if you guys haven't already too, you know, Panda has a playthrough available on Twitch, and Ari has the Indie Hive blog review. We'll link everything down below as well.
You should absolutely read it, and you should absolutely check out Kat's playthrough. I didn't until last night after I had finished my game. I finally read your review, Ari.
I wasn't going to read it either. I didn't want to spoil anything just in case.
But I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yes. But everybody, thank you guys all so much for joining us for this very impassioned discussion of Beacon Pines, a game that we were all so excited to play and share with you guys that it kind of doesn't come out of the backlog for us this time. It's one that we were just so excited that we couldn't let it gather dust on the shelves. We had to jump in. But please be sure to check out. Oh, what was that?
Said I've played it twice already. It's like,
gosh, I'm going to, because I have to find those charms that I'm missing.
I
gotta
hope you
go back.
Find them. If I knew what they were, I might be able to help you.
Yeah, maybe we'll chat offline about that one.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sounds good.
But you guys, please be sure to check out all of the links for the game in the description below, along with all of our links. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, tell us who your favorite character was or what your own favorite part of the story was. And be sure to join us next time when we plug into our next episode of the Indie Backlog Club.